Last night, for the first time in quite a while, not since I was 22, have I spent any time in a bar. Now you might be asking yourself, why on earth, Mother Maggie, would you be bringing bars into the sermon? But there's a reason. Walking into that space was both familiar and unfamiliar. Yes, I've been to bars. I know what they're like. This was a new bar. There weren't a whole lot of people there. It wasn't really crowded, but there was music, and there was more than one television, and the sound was turned down on the television, and I'm used to seeing my basketball games with announcers talking. And there was all sorts of things going on that were distracting. And one of the things that was distracting was things like people walking past me who were loaded with aftershave or perfume. We don't have that at our house. So that was really strange. And then the owner of the bar would go out back and out the back door and leave the door open and smoke a cigarette. And so we're going, what is that smell? It's just, we don't smell that ever. Nobody around us smokes. It was both strange and familiar. The scene we read about today in the gospel is both of those things. It's familiar because everybody's just come to Bethany to Martha's house for dinner, and Martha's making dinner and serving the dinner, and Mary's doing her thing, sitting at Jesus' feet, which she's been doing since we met her. And there's Lazarus sitting at the table, and the disciples are sitting at the table, and Judas is sitting at the table, and it's all just sort of like, oh, this is a normal family gathering, except it's not. First of all, Lazarus is sitting at the table. Didn't he die? How strange that must have been, both for him and for those who are sitting with him. What do you say to somebody who's been dead for 4 days? What kind of conversation? How's the weather? That doesn't work, does it? Are you enjoying your meal? Probably don't want to go there. What was it like? Might want to ask that, but probably not going to get an answer we really understand. So it's kind of like, okay, there's Lazarus, strange Uncle Charlie, we'll just leave him over there. Smile his way. Good to see you. And please hope that he doesn't say anything to me, because I won't know what to say back. And Martha is in the background doing her thing, but then Martha is also changed by Lazarus rising. Martha is the one who to Jesus and said, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And Jesus says, do you believe? And she says, yes, I believe you are the Messiah. Now, the last time we heard those words, it was from Peter. And it's not Peter in this gospel, it's Martha. Martha the servant, the Martha who is there always to take care of other people's needs. Martha is the one who says, I believe you are the Messiah. So she's changed because she probably didn't think she was ever going to say those words out loud. And Jesus is changed because she said them, and because he has wept at the tomb, and he has raised Lazarus from the dead, and everybody is looking at him just a little strangely. There are people who suddenly go, oh my gosh, he really is the Messiah, and they start to follow him. There are people who are saying, this is way too creepy, I'm going home. And then there are people who are going, well, I still just don't really understand it. Did that happen? And was he really dead? And maybe I'll just listen a little longer. And then there are people who are absolutely furious that Jesus would dare to do this thing, that Jesus would have the gall to raise somebody from the dead. It just casts all of their notions of what religion is supposed to be, what their faith in God is supposed to be and has been all their lives, and suddenly somebody's just thrown a monkey wrench into the works. So Jesus isn't the same. The disciples aren't the same. They were there. They may still be scratching their heads. They're a little fearful for what's coming. They know that people are angry, particularly people in power. And then there's Mary. Yes, she's sitting at Jesus' feet. That's where everybody expects to see her. But she has this pound of nard that outdoes any aftershave you will ever encounter in a bar. And she breaks it open, and she pours it on Jesus' feet, and she wipes it with her hair. That's an incredibly intimate act. Now, people have argued about what she was doing and whether she just didn't have a towel handy. You'd think she'd bring one, right? What was going on there? I believe, and this is just me, I believe it was an act of true love. I believe that Mary, with all of her being, loved Jesus. Yes, probably in the ways that we love one another when we have relationships. But she did this incredible thing because she understood who Jesus was. Maybe in a different way than her sister Martha, maybe in a different way from others who were sitting there, but she knew that it was important for her to express her love of this man. Probably knowing that that was all it was going to be, was an expression of her love. It was scandalous. Judas is not the only person in the room going, oh my God, she didn't do that, did she? Probably every other person there was doing the same thing. But Judas is the only one who speaks up. Now, John paints Judas as a thief, as one who constantly embezzled from the funds. We don't know if that's true. Nobody else seems to say that about Judas, but he did come out poorly in the end, didn't he? And Judas responds from a totally different mindset. He's not considering love of Master. He's not considering what Jesus has done. He may well understand Jesus to be the Messiah. We don't know. Nobody tells us. We know this much about Judas, and you pretty much read most of it today. He keeps the books. He is the chief financial officer. He makes sure this show is running, that the ministry has the funds it needs to stay on its feet and to keep marching towards Jerusalem, where he fully expects that there will be a grand overturning of everything that anybody knows, and it will change lives forever. He may also like to have a little of that cash for himself. Maybe he's taking a commission. Who knows? But his response is totally from the business side of things. Why did she do that? We could have sold that for 300 denarii and given that money to the poor. Now, the poor are frequently used as an excuse. Well, I'd love to help you out, but you know, I have my work for the poor. I need to take care of others. I'm broke because I've already given. I gave it the office. And Jesus turns to Judas and says, I suspect quite mildly, leave her alone. She's preparing me for my burial. Well, that raised eyebrows. And then he says, the poor you will have with you always, but you do not always have me. And that's where our story today ends. And it's a hard line to hear. It doesn't mean that there's always going to be poor people, so, just give it up. There's nothing you can do about that. It means that the poor are the ones we are supposed to serve all the time. With any extra pennies we have, with any extra time and skill we have, we are to give that to the poor. We are to look into them and see their gifts and skills so that it's not just a let me just give everything to you and you'll be fine. But it's a what do you have that you can give to me? And sometimes they give it without their even knowing they're giving it, because they're giving out of gratitude and love as well. We are not to give as a business. We are not to say, well, we're going to put this much money in the budget for that, and once that's spent, we're done, we've done our job, we're good, we've given our 10% to the poor. Pat me on the back, I'm a good person. Yes, we may well give our 10% or however much it is, but when another need comes up and somebody says, this family's just been burned out of their home, we're supposed to turn around and do something about that. When somebody says, this person is suffering from addiction and they cannot find a place to lay their head at night, we're supposed to do something about that. None of us here probably are truly, truly poor, even though we may well have been truly poor at some point in our life. The fact that we're sitting in a place that is well established, has a decent budget, and is taking care of others probably means that we are of that same category, even though our economic classes may be from the sublime to the ridiculous. But that's not what defines us. What defines us is what Mary did, not what Judas did. Judas's actions will have a lasting effect. He will go on to betray Jesus because Jesus tells him to. Mary's act, that act of just incredible love, whole body love for another person, is how we're supposed to love Jesus. It's how we're supposed to love Jesus, by loving those whom Jesus loved, the poor, with our whole being, without asking questions, without checking the bottom line, without seeing if anybody else is doing it first, because, God knows you wouldn't want to give people twice as much money as they need, or twice as much help, too many coats, too many houses, too many bedrooms, whatever it is. That is the kind of love that we are to have for those who Jesus loved, the poor. Everything Jesus says begins and ends with the poor, who we will have with us always, and that was recognized long before Jesus was born. Way back in the Old Testament, you will hear that said, that there are always poor who need our help, and it is our God-given responsibility to make sure that we take care of them. Can one person give another everything they need? Probably not. Most of us here are not that wealthy. But we can start. We can say, I'm going to give you what I can, and I'm going to call 6 friends. And we're going to see what we can do for you. And we do this not because we expect anything in return, but because we love Jesus, and Jesus loves you, just as Jesus loves me, just as Jesus loves all of us. So whether Mary's act was one, as Jesus interpreted it, as preparing him for his burial, or whether it was an act of complete and total love, really doesn't matter. She did it. She didn't count the cost. She didn't care about the cost. That was not important to her. It was the action. It was the pouring out of her love on the Lord that she knew to be the Messiah. Brothers and sisters, that's what we're called to do. Yes, there's always a little Judas in the back of our minds going, let's check the book. Let's see what's there. But Mary is the one we're to follow because she follows Jesus.